Hello, hello, and welcome aboard another episode of the Captain's Lifestyle Podcast. On today's episode, we have a special guest, and it's been a while since I've done an episode with a guest. They've been solo-sodes for the past, a few months, but I'm getting tired of listening to my own voice, just hearing myself talk. So I brought on my guest, Sam, today, and Sam specializes in 21st century legacy strategies focused on helping people establish a legacy of meaning, which I'm excited to dive into. He has gathered the foundational legacy habits, mindsets, and behaviors to legacy building, then uniquely coded them into tested processes and systems to establish a solid foundation for anyone to build their legacy on. His passion is to empower high-achieving men and women with the financial foundation essential to maximize fulfillment in your life and create their legacy. He's the host of the Fuel Your Legacy podcast, where he teaches the foundational habits, mindsets, and behaviors essential to create a legacy that lasts. So, Sam, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited. It's always fun to collaborate with like-minded people.
Yeah. So as I said, I've been kind of doing solo sods for the past few months, just I guess because I haven't really taken the initiative to reach out to anybody. But then I found you on Instagram, loved what you were doing, feel like you could connect well with my audience, provide a lot of value. So I was like, hey, let's have some guests back on. So excited to do this.
Cool. Well, yeah, definitely if you want to dig into specific things, just let me know. But I'm gonna just introduce myself. You okay with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. So, you ever been part of a conversation that you one person thought the conversation was about one thing? I mean, if you have a spouse or a significant other, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You
Yep.
think that they're upset at you for one thing, and they're really upset about you for something else, and it just never turns out well. Well, when I was younger, I had a very similar experience where I was part of a conversation that I didn't know I was part of, and the really impactful thing about it was I'm the seventh of 11 kids. Grew up
Wow.
in a small town in Utah, and my parents were Pizza Hut drivers, so just kind of really crappy situations there. And there was a certain level of abuse going on, both physical, mental, emotional. Not to any fault of anybody. If you know a woman who's ever been pregnant and had a child or had 11, then you would understand that the emotional and chemical imbalances in a body, they're not her fault at all.
Right.
Like I never blaming, always honoring my mom and my dad. I love them to death. But at the time, I didn't feel that way. So at the time, we all went through the same experience or very similar experiences growing up, and yet we all experienced them different. We all came out with different outcomes. We had the same events, same experiences, and yet what identities we chose out of those were completely different. And my two sisters, they have one wrote a song about all the pain, beautiful singing voices. Wrote a song about all the pain. The other one wrote a song about all of the joy and, like, let's forget, let's move on, let's move past all that. And it's that type of thing where there's two conversations happening. Both people experience the same thing, but just different outcomes. And that happens often in our life where we can go through similar experiences. And so to get deeper into the story there, growing up with the abusive situation, I decided I didn't like being abused and fancy that, so I figured, well, if I could become the leader, then I won't get beat anymore. If we can make sure everything happens the way it's supposed to happen, then I won't get beat anymore. So then I kind of replaced my mom in a lot of respects in that enforcer type role. I mean, think of like Thanos from the Avengers. This is what I like. I didn't recognize that this is how I was being perceived, but I thought, if I can just be the enforcer and make sure everybody gets their stuff done, then none of us will get beat.
Mm-hmm.
Right. What I didn't account for was the fact that they felt like somebody that they cared about their camaraderie turned on them, and that's not a good feeling either. And so that happened. And as I was growing up, my oldest not oldest, one of my older brothers came home from college, saw me enforcing my will on my other older brother. And he came in, wrestled me down to the ground, blue carpet. And I was just like smushed into the carpet. He was holding me there. What I felt was like an indefinite amount of time. There was no way I was getting out of this. I was freaking out, screaming. Finally, I calmed down and he said, Sam, this is how people feel, your siblings feel when you walk into a room.
Hmm.
Like I had imposed that much tension and control over my family that they just felt that restricted when I was in their presence. And I was like, man, that's the opposite of what I'm trying to do. And this is where my mind called back to when I was about 4 or 5 years old. I was actually on the way home. I was with my grandparents. We had taken a trip out to the dump, little red Ford Ranger pickup, taking a trip out to the dump. And he's driving back. We're driving back and the windows are down. So imagine like warm summer air blowing through your hair. Older gentleman in the driving, me, 4 or 5 years old, maybe 6, and the radio's on. Well, he turns down the radio, puts his wrinkled hand on my knee and says, Sam, your voice, it's pleasant to listen to. You could be a leader one day, maybe even be on the radio.
Hmm.
And then he turned the radio back up and we went on our way. Now, for whatever reason, at that point in time, I knew that having a radio voice was not a compliment. I've since given in and now I do podcasting and I love it. And I've given up whatever people think about what I look like. But point is, I've been given an identity of a leader. And there's two ways to lead, right? I was leading out of fear and coercion rather than out of love and connection. And that's where that had to shift in my mind. Once I shifted that, then I had to go and re-get other people, all my family, to trust me that I could be a loving leader rather than a painful leader. And that's really where I think that was the beginning of what does it mean to be have a legacy, and why is legacy so important? Because you're not going to be remembered the way you want to be remembered, right? You think you're living this life and you've got this one opinion about how you're viewed, and you really have no freaking idea how people view you.
Yeah.
And we're so sheltered from it, and a lot of times we're too scared to even ask somebody. And even if we do ask somebody, they're too scared to tell you to your face that they hate your freaking guts. So they just like, oh yeah, you're great. And you don't really know how you're being perceived. And to build a legacy that's going to last, you have to live the legacy. And to live that legacy and have it be in alignment, we've got to be clear and make sure that at least the people closest to us know what our intentions and what type of legacy we want to build. So that's where it really went to me for becoming a legacy strategist, making sure that people are building a meaningful legacy. There's a financial aspect to it. There's a coaching aspect to it. Make sure that everything is in alignment. And that's my story. I love helping people identify what was that story in your past that you thought you were doing one thing, you think you're being perceived a certain way, and really you're not being perceived the way you think you are.
Yeah, it's all about perspective. And recently I have experienced something similar to this. So in my relationship with my girlfriend is kind of how you were with your family. So I am always trying to help people in every, way that I can. So in my mind, I'm helping, right? My girlfriend in whatever, situation or challenge that she's facing. But she has made it clear to me that sometimes she doesn't want help. She's just looking for somebody to talk to, to be her boyfriend instead of her coach. And me as a holistic lifestyle coach, that's difficult for me to kind of step out of that coaching and helping role and just listen to her and like say, essentially just validate her feelings and say, yeah, that's okay. I'm sorry you're going through that, whatever. Instead, I try to help. And so I definitely understand that feeling. It was kind of a wake-up call because we've had a lot of emotional conversations about this where we just go back and forth like, I'm just trying to help, but I don't want help, but I can't not help you. That's what I do.
So can I add some insight, right? One
please.
Coach to another. Because
yes,
I'm married too. And believe me, my wife and I have similar conversations all the time. But the fallacy is that the way that you want to help is the way that she wants help. If you really wanted to help, you would listen to her. And she does want that help. She wants the help of a listening ear. She doesn't want the help of a coach. And so you can still help and she can still get the help she needs. It's just a different type of help. That's what my wife tells me. I'm like, oh, okay. It's just a different type of help. So it's still helpful, just in a different way than I think would be helpful.
Exactly. And that's taken me a long time to understand, because for me, I operate like I would get tremendous benefit from somebody doing the same thing to me. And so that's why I do it to her. But she is like completely opposite. But I, for so long, couldn't understand that. And so we would constantly have these arguments until finally, like, she just told me enough times. It's like, okay, clearly I'm doing something wrong. Everything that I've been taught and that I've learned is not working. She is telling me exactly what she wants. I should probably just listen. But for me and for my ego, that was kind of like a blow. It's because it's like, if she's telling me what I'm doing is wrong, that means I'm wrong and that I've been doing things wrong the whole time. But ever since I started to listen to what she was saying, and she's like, this is how people perceive you, I was like, whoa, like, you're right. Like, I think I'm doing it this way, but clearly that's not the case. So, um, can you just very briefly touch on how that experience with your brother, like how that was kind of a wake up call for you?
Yeah, and honestly, it was really painful at first. Uh, I don't really know how else to relate it to. I'm a Christian, and so I think of Christ a lot when I think of these analogies, and it literally was a level of, from my perspective, I was the savior in the family. I was the one that was stopping the abuse, sheltering, protecting my family from being abused, and myself. Right? I'm not going to sit here and say it wasn't a little bit selfish. Like, I didn't want to get hit either.
Mhm.
So but I was viewing myself as this protector. Like, I was literally saving these people from abuse, and to come to find out that they feel completely betrayed and that I was abusing them, when in my mind it's like, yeah, I'm definitely an enforcer. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say I didn't hit them or beat them up, or like enforce my will, right? But the reality was, in my mind, I thought, well, at least I'm not doing what mom does, So at least it's better than, yes, there's still punishment. Yes, there's still enforcement, but it's better than what we would get if it was her, And so
In
that,
your perspective,
yeah, in my
better for
perspective,
you,
that
right?
incremental improvement of type of punishment is significant, right? And partially and largely because, well, I was the enforcer, so I wasn't getting hit anymore. So it was great for me. I was like, it can't be that bad, right? But it took a while at first to really comprehend that I had been an abuser. Because the funny thing is, if you're not careful, if you give too much emotional energy to anything in life, you're going to become that thing, right? So that's a good thing if you're giving a lot of emotional attention energy to something you want. But if you're giving a lot of emotional energy in the form of hate, anger, animosity, those deep energy emotions to stuff that you don't like, you will ultimately become what you don't like in other areas of your life, and you won't be able to see it because all you can see is how much you don't like it. And so it's really dangerous, I think, to give a lot of those past experiences a lot of negative feeling, even though I'm not saying they're pleasant, no matter how, like, no matter what it is. Okay, I've got clients who have been through some horrendous things, from sexual, physical, like deadly type abuse, and they've been able to move past it because of being able to process properly. But so I'm not sitting here and saying that your feelings aren't valid, but there's a point at which we have to release the emotional tie to those experiences so that we don't become that in the future. And that was hard for me to accept at first. Once I realized it, though, and like the penny finally dropped, I mean, it was hard for me to accept it. But imagine, this snake, for lack of a better word, this person that you don't trust, and he's become your abuser. He was your friend, changed abuser, and then wanting to become your friend again. Like, talk about mental screwing yourself up.
Yeah.
And so it took me a long time to get my family. I say a long time, like 2 or 3 months, to say, look, I need this done. So I would still lead and say, this needs to get done. But I had to say, hey, look, if you don't want to do it, I will get up and do it immediately, right? Because I'm not just asking you to do stuff pointlessly. I'm asking you to do stuff because it needs to get done. And if it doesn't get done, we're going to get in trouble, right? So my intention in asking is because it needs to get done. But if you won't do it, then I will go do it immediately. So it took a lot of action and leadership from that perspective on my own part, of saying, okay, well, I'm going to go do this immediately, so they could see, okay, Sam's not asking for pointless stuff. He's not asking because he just wants control. He's asking because something actually needs to be done. It took about 2 months before they were willing to, when I asked them to do something again, to actually do it. But at first, it would be like, hey, you can say no. If you say no, I'm not going to beat you up. Like, walk them through the mental processes of what was going to happen if they said no, to the point where they were comfortable saying no, and then they were choosing into helping rather than being forced into helping. But it's a interesting thing to go through as as the person who doesn't view themselves an abuser and then finding out, oh yeah, you've been an abuser too. And you're just like, crap.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a tough situation for sure. Something that I'm going through right now. I mean, not to the extent like no abuse was happening, no physical abuse. I guess there was like verbal abuse from like arguments, and stuff like that, but just miscommunication,
Right.
not abuse. But I experienced something similar again in the Marine Corps when, most people of higher rank in the Marine Corps in leadership positions, a lot of them, at least from my experience, were not leading by example, like what you learn to do, like asking, hey, this needs to get done. If you can't do this, like I will go do it myself because it needs to get done. That's what leaders do. Instead, it was more do this just because I said so, because I like the feeling of power. And a lot of times this stuff didn't really need to get done. It was just busy work just for the sake of, being busy. So how have you noticed, or what changes have you noticed once you began to lead by example as opposed to kind of more leading by force?
Yeah, it's been an interesting change over the years. For right after that happened, like, well, in my family, so you have to think of the timeline here. So this all went down when I was like 13 or 14 years old, and at the same time, I found out that my mother was leaving the religion that I was raised in, and so that was like a really like another dramatic change. And so I actually moved out when I was 14 and lived with my second oldest brother. So I kind of removed myself from the situation. And then over the next multiple years, leadership up until really like a year and a half ago, I've kind of avoided leadership in a large response. I just said, look, clear, I'm just going to be taking some serious personal accountability. I'm going to go become successful myself and screw anybody else. My experience has taught me, right, which was false experience, but that nobody else was going to do what I was going to do anyways. Nobody was going to work as hard as I was going to work anyways. So why try and lead them? And that was like it's a false belief, but that was my belief up until I'm honestly probably 3 or 4 years ago when I started thinking, okay, well, maybe if it was the right leader or the right type of leadership, then it could get better. And really within the last year and a half, I've really started focusing a lot more on leadership. But part of it comes in, and I don't know if you guys can hear this tone or not, but I'm aware I've spent years in sales, right, and years of my childhood dealing with a bipolar mother. So, or I don't know what she was, bad up and down, right? So,
Hmm.
um, learning how to read somebody very quickly and then seem certain enough that they believe that you're certain. And so a lot of my tones when I speak, they come off across as if it's like absolute truth. And then somebody who doesn't like confrontation, they're not going to confront it, they're just going to go along with it. Well, that's its own problem in leadership. It's great in sales, it's great in certain aspects of life, but the downside is if that's how you lead, and this is what I found out maybe a year ago, that I had this team. I've had probably 30 people that I'm leading, but because I would always speak first, because I would always say, hey, this is where we're going, this is how we're going to do it, then nobody would come up with like share their opinions of what would be better. And so
Yeah.
I've had to learn to say, hey, this is the objective, and then learn to be silent and say, how do you think we could accomplish this? And get really comfortable with silence. And I think that's the key to leadership. It's also like the hardest thing for me is to just, why do you think that is? Even with your wife, I've got all these problems. Oh, okay. That must be really hard. Why do you think that is? I don't know. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, interesting.
Yeah. That's
And just not talking is so hard because like in your mind, it's like this is a simple mathematical equation. Da, 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 da,
yes.
da, done, dealt with. But you have to let them come to the conclusion. That's probably been the biggest growth in leadership for me is just learning how to be silent, be still, and allow them to be led rather than dragging somebody along.
Yeah. I've noticed the exact same thing. I like to phrase it as just asking good questions. So, like in coaching, instead of telling someone, hey, this is what you should do, maybe try asking them, what do you think you should do to overcome this problem? And most of the time, my clients come up with the answers themselves. And I'll support that. Yes, that's a idea. Go try that. If that doesn't work, I have this suggestion for you. You know, so instead of telling people what they might not want to hear, because a lot of times they don't necessarily want to change. They have to find out for themselves. And then so yeah, just asking good questions is huge. So
Mhm.
now I want to transition a little bit into talking about like your personal legacy, the legacy you want to lead. So your core values are pander, integrity, and gratitude. Tell me a little bit about first, kind of what prompted you to create core values, and then second, why those core values are meaningful to you.
Yeah, great question. So I was actually speaking at a retreat in Florida, and this was like I'd thought about core values, but probably just like everybody's thought about core values. Oh, I think these are like good core values, but really you never really think about what are my core values, and until you actually put something into words and you really start analyzing the um, analyzing the definitions of the words, right? Because the word candor, you could, if you didn't really know the difference between the words, you could use the word frank, you could use the word curt, right? And those are kind like if you look up a dictionary, it's going to say they're synonyms. But what's important about words is what's the intention, what's the feeling behind the word. And so we were at this retreat and we did two core values tests, right? So first was we did a test about what we thought our core values was. And then we took a list of a bunch of core value words, like words that would be fitting core values. And we said, okay, we got to limit these down to 10. So we got to wipe out everything that's not true. And we got to find the top 10. And then once we have to find the top 10, then we've got to whittle that down to top 3. Right. And the goal was to be really honest with yourself. So some people will say love's a core value, or family's a core value, or celebration's a core value, whatever it is, right? They have all these core values. And for purposes of the retreat that I was at, that's as far as we went. We just whittled it down to 3. For me, in my coaching aspect, when I'm helping somebody identify their core values, it's a lot deeper than that, because your core values, we get into analyzing, hey, where did you spend the last week of, like every 15 minutes for the last week to month of your time? Like, where did you spend your time? Where did you spend your money? Where did you spend your emotions, right? Because that is a better indication of what your actual core values are than like what you think. Because we all have wonderful self-concepts. Most people have wonderful self-concepts about themselves. And so they're going to spew a bunch of bullshit at you and say, oh, well, this is what it is. It's like, no, I don't think so. You say your family's a core value, yet you only spend maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours with your family every day.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm clear that family is not a core value of mine. And I spend 4 or 5 or 6 hours with my family every day. Right. I'm working towards having it be one of my core values, but still, even then, I don't know that it will become one. Candor. So candor specifically, it's the ability to speak your mind and say what you're seeing with an intention of love and concern for the person you're speaking with, which is different than being curt or frank, where it's complete disregard. You're just like, I'm going to say what I'm going to say and screw you. Right. So candor is really important because of what it means as far as you're actually doing it with the right intention. So you're going to speak with the right intention to this individual. So that's why I think candor is important to me. Integrity. Integrity is one that my mom, so let's go back to the story of my mom, right? So my mom had us read this word every day. We had to memorize the definition of integrity and living true to yourself and being in alignment and all this stuff. Well, so we'd been taught about integrity for years. And then come to find out that my mom had been living out of integrity. She didn't believe in God. She didn't believe in all this stuff, but she's been teaching us for like years. And so that threw me for a real big like mind whirlwind. But I still love the definition, right? I personally, I don't profess or believe that I will ever be in full perfect integrity for a sustained period of time. So I view integrity more like a pathway through the forest or something, right? And it's dark. And my goal is just to cross that pathway as frequently as possible. but like I'm fully aware that I'm out of integrity 90% of the time or more, right? But my goal is to get back into integrity or cross that line as much as possible. My goal is to do what I say I'm going to do, show up where I'm going to say where I say I'm going to show up, be a provider, keep my commitments. So that's why integrity is important to me. I understand that I'm failing every day at it, but it's my striving goal,
Hmm.
right? And I expect when I'm interacting with other people that when they say they're going to do something, they're going to do it, right? So it's a value there. And then gratitude. Um, are you religious at all?
I'm not religious,
No.
no.
Okay. So, um, in the Christian faith, right? And I don't know how much detail, it's really in every faith. So one of the things
Yeah.
that my mom did when we were younger, because we were all homeschooled, is we actually would go study like every other religion and go to their worship services and interview their congregation leaders just to
Hmm.
kind of find out what they believed. I didn't know that she was searching herself. It was good education for me.
Right.
So the concept is still the same, regardless, but there's this concept of forgiveness, right? And whether that's from a religious perspective or just between you and your spouse, right? Um, this is going to sound funny, so it's okay, but I don't really, in my life, forgiveness doesn't exist anymore. And the reason it doesn't exist is my core belief about the purpose of me being on this planet is to learn to become a creator, as the universe or God or whatever you want to label that person as, or that entity or that concept, right? So if my goal is to become a creator and everything that could possibly happen to me in my life is nothing more than an opportunity to learn to create more love and harmony. Like you could stab me, you could do whatever, and all it is an opportunity for me to learn to have more compassion,
Hmm.
right? It's no longer like, oh, I need to forgive you for stabbing me. It's like, why would I forgive you for giving me a gift of growth? It just doesn't make sense to me. So because I operate from everything in my life is a gift to Sam and an opportunity to grow, then really it's changed my life to there's only gratitude, and it's eliminated so much pain and heartache and sorrow from my life. And that's why gratitude is a core value, just because it's seated down with my corest belief about what my purpose is on this planet.
Yeah, I love that. So yeah, because I've kind of struggled with the concept of forgiveness as well. Um, but recently, what's helped me is just kind of understanding or trying to understand where the other person is coming from and why they would do like a bad thing, for example. So somebody has to be in such a bad place themselves to want to do harm or to put down another human being, another animal, to destroy the planet, whatever. They have to be in such a bad place themselves to do that to somebody else. And so for me, it's kind of the same thing. It's now, instead of getting angry or resentful or wanting revenge, I just feel a lot of compassion towards them. It's like, wow, you must be suffering a great deal, and I'm truly sorry that you're going through that. And naturally, I want to help, but they, of course, don't want any help, and so there's nothing I can do besides just, you know, kind of accept it and just not push back in any way, not say anything inflammatory or argue back with them. Just kind of, just yeah, just be compassionate with them.
Yeah. And that's how you treat your spouse or your significant other, is
Yes.
with compassion, because that's the end result, right? If somebody's in that much pain, it's like, man, that must just be really hard for you. I remember my wife. We were, I think we had just had our second child, maybe not, maybe it was just our first, and she was still pregnant. But um, my oldest son, I was sitting down at the table, I was doing something, eating my breakfast or whatever, and my oldest son, he was just crying and whining and screaming at me. And I don't put up with a lot of that from my kids. So I was like, no, you need to do what we'd asked you to do. And I'm just going to ignore this. And so she was in the room. She was obviously emotional for other reasons. And she came in and she's like, why don't you recognize your son? Why don't you? And she starts laying into me about how I'm treating my son. And I was like, somehow I don't think this is about Declan and me. um I like,
There's
he's going to
always
go,
something
yeah,
else.
we're going to go put him in the other room. He's going to keep crying. That's fine. There's, and my value structure, people don't like it as much, but it's myself is number one, and then my wife, and kids are replaceable. I don't want to have to replace them, but they're replaceable. I know how to do that. It's fun. And you know what I mean? So kids are secondary. Like, I mean, that's like, if I have to make a choice between my wife or my kids, it's my wife. Like, for me, I've already made that decision, and I'm okay with it. My wife's not always okay with it, but that's okay. And so we just ignored the kid, and I was like, hey, like, what's going on? Like, are you feeling unrecognized, unheard, unseen? Like, let's talk about that, because that's where I think this issue is. I'm not mad that you're yelling at me. I don't have any, like, I don't need to defend myself. A lot of people I know, they would be like, why are you yelling at me? Why are you, obviously I'm not bad to my son, whatever. I don't hit him, whatever. But that wasn't the point. The point was, she was feeling pain. She wanted to be recognized. She was expressing that feeling through the experience of me and my son. And being able to perceive that and say, okay, what's really going on here? That's a huge, important thing to be able to recognize, okay, what's the underlying things that really need to be addressed, and not focus on so much of the surface stuff. Because the surface stuff can seem urgent, but really the underlying stuff, when you solve the underlying issues, a lot of the urgent stuff just disappears. So that's what I've learned as far as leading my family and working in my family demographic. And I think that applies to my business as well, actually.
Yeah, it's all about communication. Yeah, almost never is the actual issue that's being presented the actual issue. There's almost always something underlying, like you said, not being heard or something like that. So, um, I I would be remiss not to dive into legacy, because that's the thing that I really want to talk about on this podcast. Um, so tell me a little bit about why creating a legacy is so important, and then we'll dive into how you can create a legacy.
Yeah. So I think for me, and again, this is my personal mission. I just believe, again, go back down to my core beliefs. I believe that you are worth being remembered. I believe that everybody who listens to this podcast, I'm speaking to you right now, you're worth being remembered. There's a thing in your life, there's an area, there's a belief, there's an experience that you had that you're worth being remembered for. And because I believe that everybody has something they're worth being remembered for, then the question comes is, how do we help you be remembered for that thing? Right? One, you have to recognize it. And then two, you have to actually demonstrate it or express it to enough people or in enough ways that people actually recognize you and remember you that way. A lot of people, they're by the age of really 14, 15 years old, they're just trying to survive this life.
Mm-hmm.
They've given up on any dreams. They've given up on any of that. And they're just trying to survive this life. And I think that's sad, because there's so much greatness inside of them if they only saw it themselves. And so a large part of the Fuel Your Legacy concept is, one, understanding that you have a dream, connecting you back to your dream and how you want to be remembered. And then asking the question, why not do that now? I was asking this of a potential client the other day, and I was like, well, what do you love? Like, what's, like, if you could do anything, money was no longer an issue, you had hundreds of millions of dollars, whatever, what would you do? And he's like, I would go be a yacht racer. I would just be on boats all day long. I love boats. I'd be water skiing. I'd be doing anything with boats. I said, okay, well, why aren't you doing that? Well, I got to go to school. Why do you got to go to school? So I can get money. Okay, so money is an issue. What about, why not do it anyways? Well, because I don't have the time. Okay, well, why don't you have the time? Because I got to go to school, because I got to get money, right? So basically it comes down to time and resources is why somebody chooses not to be living their legacy. Right? If you had all of the time and all of the resources to do what you want, what would you do? And so then that begs to question, okay, well, this is where the business coaching comes in and says, okay, well, what are you doing to get more time and to get more resources?
Mm-hmm.
If you continue down the path that you're going down, does it have the horsepower to ever get you to where you want to get to? And so I just think, so legacy is important to me because I believe that you have a core value, like you have a core thing that you were put on this place to be remembered for, and I want to help you share that. So that's why legacy is important to me.
Yeah, that's awesome. I coach my clients with the same thing because I think that far too many people these days either hate their job, hate going to school, just generally dislike their average day. And I think that's horrible. You should wake up excited and, happy to go throughout your day, loving what you do, not, wake up, have an hour to maybe get ready, shovel some food down your gullet and get in the car, drive to a place you don't want to be at, get stuck in traffic, and just so much stress and anxiety. And then to come home, and because you're stressed, your family life is stressful and you're not fulfilled. And yeah, that's just no way to live. And so living in more alignment with yourself, like your core values, and starting to work towards building your legacy is crucial to living a fulfilling life. So how do you go about creating your legacy the smart way, as you like to call it?
Yeah. So that's actually joining two concepts. So I'm going to separate those two concepts just to be clear here, because I think that to really do it the smart way, you've got to first start with the structure. So imagine like the Lincoln Memorial or a Greek cathedral structure where you've got the foundation. The foundation's legacy. In my mind, how do you want to be remembered in 20 years from now? Well, not 20 years, 200 years from now, 6 generations. So this is your great grandchildren. How are they going to remember you? What are they going to be saying about the impact you had, the legacy you left? So that's that. You have to start with the right intention. So that's the legacy. And then next is core values. Those need to be in alignment, how you want to be remembered and how, like, your core values, because core values are important. So this is what my friend says. He says, people are expedient. So core values are good until one of your human needs something, and human needs will trump core values every day of the week. So you might have a core value not to steal until you need food. You're going to freaking steal food, right? So core values, they should be somewhat in alignment with even your 6 human needs. And that may be another step that I add into this building, but right now I've labeled as core values. And then fulfillment's the next thing. Now I describe fulfillment in one of 4 ways. Okay. And if you have a way, if you want to reach out to me, Instagram, Sam Knickerbocker, Facebook, whatever, and add some context here or think, hey, this might be a better way of saying this, I'm super open to correction. But for me, this is how I experience fulfillment. Okay. So 1, did I cry tears of joy? Like, like it's a deep, for me, I've got 2 kids, right? When I see my kids running around and playing with each other or tickling each other or laughing together, or whatever, like that, I don't care what it is. It just brings tears to my eyes because it's such a wonderful, happy, enjoyable thing to see that I'm crying, right? It's not because I'm sad. I'm happy. So that's one area of fulfillment. The other area of fulfillment, so just to put in perspective, last night, my one mentor said, hey, we're going to get on this call with another mentor. And this guy, he's in my same industry. He started at age 25, been working for 25 years. Now he's worth $100 million, right? And I get to be on this call with 100 people and we get to ask him questions and like really be there and interact with this guy. So who wants that type of mentorship? Sign me up. And so I hear about this. Well, the call's at 6 a.m. Most days I sleep until 8, just to give some perspective on Sam. I like sleeping in, but last night I woke up at 2 o'clock. I woke up at 3 o'clock. I woke up at 4 o'clock. My wife is like, hey, why do you keep getting in and out of bed? I'm like, because I'm so excited about this call, right? So when was the last time you were so excited you were losing sleep about it? Not stressed, not anxious, but like so excited, going to Disneyland, Christmas Eve, getting married, whatever it is. When was the last time you were so excited? That's some true fulfillment there for me. Other time, when did you last, like, you heard something and before you could control it, you shouted for joy. You were just so freaking excited. You're like, yeah, right? Kind of like you're on the edge of your seat. Somebody scores, game-winning shot, and you jump out without even thinking about it. You're so excited your team won, right? So that type of fulfillment. And then last is like butterflies. The type of butterflies you get when you're about to lean in for the first kiss. Your hand is crawling over to her leg and you're like, is she going to reciprocate? Like that type of butterflies. Okay. So for me, that's fulfillment. Like if I can live in one of those experiences every day, I'm just thrilled. Like there's not a bad day in my life as long as I'm experiencing one of those. So that's fulfillment. And then we look at your faith. So these are the pillars. So those are the 4 layers of the building. And then we have
3 layers,
pillars.
correct?
Yeah, 3 layers.
Okay.
Right.
Just checking.
Yeah. Well, 4 if we include the human needs. I
Right.
include that. Right now
Okay.
it's 3, but we'll say that. So then there's 5 pillars that make up this building, right? And the first one is faith. And people, when I say faith, they're like, well, I don't believe in God. Like, okay, then you don't understand what faith is. Faith is a principle of action. We generally have faith in God, which means God is a secondary to faith. That doesn't mean I don't believe in God, I'm not faithful, I'm all of those things, but I choose to apply a principle to my belief in God, right? So I have faith in, but you could have faith in yourself. You could have faith in your shoes, the sun, the bottle, whatever, right? You have faith that it works. So faith is number 1, family, number 2, fitness, number 3, finances is number 4, and then fun is number 5. So these are your 5 pillars: faith, family, finance, fitness, fun, or fitness, finance, fun, whichever way you want to say it. And then we set goals in each of these areas in our life and identify in each of these areas of our life what really brings us true fulfillment. And then the capstone of this, I think of it like a round capstone, like a sun. Okay. And the sun rays, if I was drawing it up, it would be little stick figures on top of a sun. And that is the impact that you're having. So to be in alignment with the people on top, the results, you could say, would they say Sam's legacy is what he says his legacy is? Would they say his core values are what he says his core values are? Do they know what fulfills Sam? Do they know what's important in his faith, his family, his fitness, finance, fun, right? And so the goal is to get in alignment. Okay. Once you're in alignment and you think, okay, I know exactly what I want to do, this is where the SMART legacy comes in. Okay. So any questions about the building structure for right now?
No, I think it's pretty good. I have because I wrote all this down, I have a little picture of, a Greek building with all the labels on it. So.
Perfect. You probably drew it better than me. So this is good.
Probably not.
Okay. So we've got this building. Now, SMART goals. Now, this is the funniest thing because I've hated SMART goals ever since I heard them. I'm like, why are we being specific, measurable, actionable, like reasonable? Well, who cares if it's reasonable or not? How is that even a goal if it's reasonable? I don't know. Like, and then time bound. Why are we giving ourselves a time limit to where we're now going to feel bad or good based on whether we like it? Just for me, it doesn't. I studied neuropsychology, so it doesn't really align with great psychological habits in my mind. So, so I renamed them. I still like the acronym, but I changed it a little. Okay, so I think the S has got to stand for sexy. Okay. If you haven't seen something sexy in your life, go Google sexy. Okay. Like probably don't actually, but at least do it on modern research. But point is, it's got to be something that when somebody else hears or sees your legacy, they can't get it out of their flipping mind. It's so sexy. It's so captivating. It's like, I'm a man, okay? So don't take this the wrong way, but it's like a good cleavage or a nice butt or something. Like you see them walking down the street, doesn't matter. You're holding your wife's hand or your girlfriend's hand. You're like, she looks nice. Like she looks good, right? And it's something you're not even embarrassed to tell your spouse because they think the same thing. Like, dang, she looks good.
Yeah.
It's got to be sexy, right? Your vision of what's going to happen, it's got to be so captivating that people can't not think about it. Okay, so when you're writing out your legacy, your power statement, your like your slogan, it's got to be something that sticks in their mind. They wake up at 2 a.m. thinking, "Man, that would be awesome." Okay, so what are things in history that we could say are like this? Okay, Tesla orbiting a car around the planet. Why? Because people will freaking talk about it, and it's cool, right? I wish I had a car orbiting the planet. Okay, Mount Rushmore. Who in the earth? I don't know if you've been to Mount Rushmore. It's in the middle of nowhere. Who decided to go carve some giant old faces on some mountain in the middle of nowhere?
Yeah.
Like it attracts people from all over the world because it's such a captivating idea. It's like, whoa, is that real?
Yeah.
I want to reach out and touch it. Okay. So those are some ideas of like, what is so sexy that people can't ignore it. Okay. So that's one thing. Now, the next thing is M. Now, this is crucial to have a really big impacting legacy. It's got to be so massive that you can't accomplish it yourself. Because if it's just a SMART goal that's measurable and all this small thinking stuff, then you don't ever have to tell anybody about it. You don't actually need to enlist anybody else. But if you're not enlisting people in your legacy, you probably won't be remembered. So
Yep.
it's got to be massive enough that you can't do it on your own. Now, the flip side of that, and this is where people don't like it, is it's got to be audacious. It's got to be that big, blingy thing. You're like, why are you doing that? You're wasting money. You're wasting whatever. Why'd you just have all these rockets? I mean, Elon Musk, he was shooting all these rockets off and failing and failing and failing, and people started making fun of him. So he's like, fine, I'll take the whole compilation of all my fails, and I'll put it on YouTube and make a bunch of money. So it's like, I mean, he's brilliant, but the point is, it's got to be so audacious that you're creating separation. You have your true believers and your haters. Apple has done really good at this. People are willing to pay twice as much for a phone that does half as much as an Android because it's Apple. Mm-hmm. And it's a prestige and it's a feeling. And so you have to think about, is your dream audacious enough that it's actually causing separation? Right? If you go on my Facebook profile or watch me speak, I show pictures of me walking around, of me taking a photo shoot in like hot pink high heels. And people are like, well, that's weird. That's a bad image. I'm like, whatever. I look dang good in those high heels, right? Why do I do that? Because I want to stick in people's mind. I want people to know Sam's bold. He doesn't care. He's not dictated by what you think of him. He's going to transfer on his mission no matter what. He's going to do no matter what it takes to get there. So is it audacious enough? Are you intentionally planning things that are audacious into your thing to create separation? Because you need to find out who your adamant believers are. Okay. So that's your audacious. And then is it remarkable, right? You could have all those other things. And if nobody's talking about it, it's not spreading, right? It's got to be an infectious spread, whatever this idea is. I don't know if you've been on Clubhouse recently, but that is something that is an infectious spread. As soon as I got it and saw it, I'm telling everybody about it because it's the coolest thing. It's cooler than Facebook. It's cooler than podcasts. It's cooler than Google. It's cooler than Instagram. It's cooler than anything out there right now. Like Clubhouse is truly a next generation type platform.
You want to go ahead and shout out your Clubhouse?
It's just S Knickerbocker. S Knickerbocker. If you're on there, follow me. Starting some regular rooms. Anyways, super excited about that. But it's so cool, right? So it's remarkable. People can't help but talk about it. Once you see it, once you experience it, you're like, okay, this is the coolest thing ever. Okay. So is it remarkable? And then lastly, transparency. Rather than time bound, what if you could do all of those, but if you aren't transparent and say, look, this is my goal, this is my vision, I'm going there, and make sure the whole world knows about it, then you probably won't ever accomplish it. Because if you don't have to tell people about it, it's not big enough. It's not big enough. So are you being transparent? Are you willing to fail spectacularly at your legacy? Right? That I think is the key, is being transparent, making sure that everybody knows, right? If you think of Tom Brady, he ditched his Patriots that everybody knew he was like a dynasty there. He could have done anything. He went to the bottom of the NFL, right? I mean, I don't know if it was the worst team, but it was in the bottom, right? Mm-hmm. So he went to the bottom of it and resurrected a team and took them from nothing and said, look, we're going to the Super Bowl. And he got to the Super Bowl. He won, right? What if he had failed? What if he didn't win the Super Bowl, right? People would still be talking about him because he tried. He did everything he could to be there. And so understanding that when you're creating a legacy, transparency is important. That's a smart way. So sexy, massive, audacious, remarkable, and transparent. That's a smart way to build a legacy. You have to do the groundwork, build the building, but then you got to let people know about the building.
Boom. Love that. Yeah. I mean, what's the stat? Like only like some small percentage of people have their goals written down. Like everybody has some vision of something in their head, but almost nobody has something written down. And from there, a further smaller percentage of people have actually, created actionable steps and goals and told people about what they want to create. And I think one of the reasons for that is just people being scared to fail. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would absolutely. And I'll throw another one in there just a fair warning, just because this happened to me. So just like, you know,
Hmm.
what is it? Public service announcement, PSA.
PSA.
Um, yeah. So I would be, I think a lot of goals are good to just like blatantly say out there. I don't know in the few, I did this once and it didn't end well. I would be cautious of sharing your financial goals, like actual specific numbers on social media. So I don't know that I would go post and be like, I'm going to make $1 million this year, right? And here's my plan to do it. Because you get a lot of scammers and a lot of people trying to like, they perceive that you're wealthy. And so they try and do weird things to you. And so like, spam your pages. And it's good to have some of that. Like you do need the audaciousness, you do need the separation, but there's a point where certain things are not beneficial, I think, just in my experience. So I don't know that I would share actual specific number goals as far as what you want to be making and what you did make last year, things like that. I would keep your
Hmm.
financials not completely guarded, but I wouldn't be putting them on social media. So that's the only area that I would say, okay, don't share that. But everything else has been I've been fine sharing, and it's created separation. It's created people who are like, you're never gonna make it. And then I have the people that honestly I didn't think really believed in me that much. They're my friends, they're people that I know, but they'll come on. I've had clients, even when I have people trying to like trash me online, I've had clients come on like, hey, you clearly don't know who Sam is, even people who chose not to work with me, but because of my candor, integrity, and gratitude, right? Because they know who I am, they're like,
Yeah.
yeah, you're talking about the wrong guy, guys. Like that's not who Sam is. So I don't know where you met him, but that's not who he is. And it's cool when the people you don't expect to protect you online will protect you. And a lot of people will be, especially on social media, like, oh, I got this negative comment, I'm going to delete it. It's the worst thing you can do. It's the worst thing. Don't delete your negative comments.
Nope. Free
Freaking share
publicity.
it.
Yeah.
Pump it up. Say, hey, this guy just said this. Oh, you got a nasty message in Messenger? This guy just said this. And block out their name, because it's not about being rude.
Right.
It's about people hate me. It's good, right? It's a good thing that you're creating the separation, and people need to see that as a good thing rather than oh, I must be bad and wrong and I shouldn't do it. No, you need that. You need to know, you need that feedback.
Absolutely. Especially in business, a lot of the successful businesses are polarizing. Like, we are this way. If you're not this way, that's fine. But this is how we do business. And not saying that you have to, disregard everybody else's feelings and like actively push against that, but like have your way of doing something. Like for me, this is very common. Like I am the way I am, and a lot of people don't agree with that. Like I post stuff on the mindset, the positive mindset and mentality around money, and then people comment back like, oh, you're like white privilege, you think everybody can be so successful and positive. And it's like, wow, like they are clearly in a bad position themselves, because nobody who is more successful than you will ever talk shit on you,
Yeah.
because they know the struggle. They've experienced the same thing. And so yeah, absolutely, publish your haters, but like you said, block out their names, because it's not about you know
Yeah.
revenge or anything like that.
And a
But
lot of those haters. So in my book, The 9 Pillars to Build a Meaningful Legacy, you can get it on Amazon or on my website for free. But in that book, the first section is do it for your haters. And the reason is most haters, it's again, this is where the compassion comes from. Most of them honestly don't believe that they could do it. The reason that they're telling you not to do it is not because they hate you, not because they want you to fail, but because they don't want you to fail, because they don't want you to experience the heartache and the perceived heartache that if they were to do it and they failed, they would feel like crap. So they won't want you to feel that way. And so you just shouldn't try.
hmm,
And so the haters, that's like the number one group of people that I work for, not because I want to prove them wrong, but because I want to be an example of like, look, even the guy who grew up abused, dumpster diving, like living out of Pizza Hut, even that kid can become successful. And I know I
yeah,
don't have it the worst, right? There's tons of people who have it worse than me,
yep,
but I've got my story, and it was bad for me, right? For me, in my experience, I didn't enjoy it. So my story is valid, and if I can do it, you can do it. So it's not a like rub it in your face like you're an idiot for not trying. It's a, hey, like come on, like let me show you how I did it so you can do it as well. That it's just a very energy of love rather than the coercion or the fear based energy.
Yeah, and going back all the way to the beginning of this podcast, leading out of love as opposed to from fear, right? Same thing now, what you're talking about. Instead of, trying to prove your haters wrong, which I think can be good in a sense, but more of kind of paving the path for them to follow in your footsteps, right? I think that's very powerful. Um, so Sam, this podcast has been amazing. I really love the do you have a specific name for it, like the building of like legacy? Is there a name for
Um,
that?
I haven't named that one. I named my, I just call it the Legacy Building. I don't know.
Legacy building, yeah.
What should the name be? I mean, I'm open to suggestions. That's one area that I need to get better at, honestly, is naming my concepts. I've got 4 transformational questions that'll change your life, and I have those. I call those. I don't know if I call them that, but the journal is called the Identify Your Identity Journal, and then I have a fulfillment journal. So I don't really know what I'm going to call that building, but it's how. I mean, that's the structure. That's what I do. It's how I do it. So.
Yeah.
Everything I do in my life is based on that building structure for me in my life. And I encourage other people to use it for their life. And then I have what's called an incentive quadrant. So I named that, but I'll come up with a good name for the building.
Yeah, I think you should. So for me and my brand, the Captain's Lifestyle, it's kind of, pirate themed or, ship voyage type theme. So I teach my clients as well, how to create their core values, their mission statement, their vision statement. And I call their mission statement their treasure map, because I believe that if you live in accordance with that, you will reach the end of your life and have achieved your ultimate, life's treasure, to be on your deathbed with zero feelings of regrets. And then I call your core values your compass, because if you live in alignment with that compass and you kind of follow your compass directions, aka your core values, that leads you to your treasure, your mission statement. So
yeah, I'll be thinking about it. What do I call my building? What do I call? I need a sexy name for my building. There
yeah,
you go.
sexy building. How about that? Sexy building.
Sexy name for my building. I'll work on it. I'll work on it for you.
Yeah. Anyways, I love that. And so yeah, this has been a fantastic podcast. I think everybody who listens to this I would hope, go back and start thinking about the legacy that they want to leave. And where'd you say they can download your book or get it?
Just on samknickerbocker.com. There's a link there. I ask for your email. So just know, like, again, that's the Candor. I don't really care. I don't hide stuff. Like, it is what it is.
That's how it is.
You can go buy it. If you have Amazon Kindle, it's free. If you don't have Amazon Kindle, then you can buy the actual paperback book for five. I think it's $5 or $4. I don't know, on Amazon. So you can get it on Amazon if you want. And then there's also like a webinar on my website that just goes over like the fuel aspect of it. So the fuel is funny because people are like, well, why did you say fuel your legacy? And my thing is, like, let's say you have this awesome dream, this awesome legacy, you've done everything. I just liken it to a car. If you had this Lamborghini or your favorite car sitting in the garage, but you had no gas, no oil, nothing to fuel it, how cool is it?
Yeah, it's just sitting there.
It's cool, but it's completely useless, So that's where I think what's fueling your legacy, and that comes down to the time and resources question. That's transfers into more of a financial business conversation than your dreams, but both need to be in alignment to really get your dream to where you want to be.
Right. Cool.
So.
All right. Well, you want to tell people where else they can connect with you? We talked about the website and the Clubhouse.
Sure.
Any other socials?
So I got Instagram, sam.knickerbocker just at sam.knickerbocker. I'm the same on Facebook, Sam Knickerbocker. You can Google me. I've done a lot of work to make sure that anywhere somebody Googles me, they find me. So there's only one other competition as a Baptist preacher. So I'm not that guy. But our wives look similar. Yeah, that was a branding decision. That's a whole nother conversation. And then YouTube, you can go to Sam Knickerbocker on YouTube, and I've got videos there of my podcast. The podcast is Fuel Your Legacy, the Fuel Your Legacy show. And that's on pretty much every podcasting app except for Stitcher. I don't know why I can't get on Stitcher. It's annoying, but just know it's not on Stitcher. And then my website, that's pretty much it. But come to Clubhouse. Clubhouse is it.
That's where it's at
right now. It's so cool.
Awesome. All right, Sam. Well, yeah, thank you so much for coming on the Captain's Lifestyle podcast and spreading your wisdom. And yeah, guys, go hit up Sam. I'm sure he'll be happy to respond to your messages.
Yeah, in fact, I'm happy to like if you guys want to call me. I'm like I say, I'm pretty open. So either Facebook call me or if you message me on Instagram, Facebook, I'm happy to spend half an hour chatting with you and kind of processing with you. And I want to support you, so I'll send anybody for coaching stuff back to you. But if you just want to have a conversation, happy to have a conversation with you.
Perfect. I would recommend that, guys. So yeah, Sam, thanks for coming on. And don't forget, live the captain's lifestyle. Peace.